We have a lot of big news to cover today, including Vancouver Canucks GM Jim Benning meeting with ownership to determine what the future plans are with that organization. We also got word that the Pittsburgh Penguins are for sale and might be sold as early as this week. We also have some trade rumors involving Samuel Girard, Vitaly Kravtsov, and potential return of Tuukka Rask with a different team other than the Bruins. We'll discuss all that coming up next. Welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a real big variety of NHL news to talk about here today. Let's kick things off first with some news from the NHL waiver wire. We have two more players on waivers today. Will be interesting to see if we have any claims. We do have Vancouver Canucks player Guillaume Brisebois on waivers today. Of course, he's been on season opening injured reserve list, so he hasn't been counting against the cap for the Vancouver Canucks. And at this point, he likely would have been assigned before this, but because he was hurt, that wasn't able to take place. So therefore, he's on waivers for the purpose of being sent down now that he's healthy and ready to play. And the Montreal Canadiens have placed forward Adam Brooks on waivers. Of course, Brooks, the former Toronto Maple Leaf, who Montreal claimed on waivers a few weeks ago earlier this season, is on waivers here yet again. He never really found a regular spot with the Habs, so clearly they're looking to possibly go in a different direction or have him available for their American Hockey League team in Laval. So it'll be interesting to see if maybe Toronto tries to get him back, or if any other teams decide to give Adam Brooks a chance. We'll find out tomorrow afternoon once the waiver wire news comes out again tomorrow. Now, of course, we also have plenty of other news today, including the retirement announcement from longtime NHL defenseman Dion Phaneuf. Now, of course, this won't come as a huge surprise because Dion hasn't played in about 2 years. Of course, most recently played with the Los Angeles Kings. Dion Phaneuf certainly had a long, successful career, and I believe he is being honored tonight by the Toronto Maple Leafs as well at their home game tonight, so it'll be interesting to see exactly what they do in that regard. But of course, Phaneuf started his career as a Calgary Flame, came on after a real solid junior career, World Juniors and the Team Canada affair where he earned the nickname Double Dion. Of course, went on to get traded to the Maple Leafs, where he wore the C as the team captain for quite an extended time. He was a longer serving captain than even some big names like Wendell Clark and Doug Gilmour, etc. Of course, he was there during a very difficult time. That group never really had the success that they were hoping for. Of course, a few things went down during Dion's time there, like the salute gate, I guess we'll say, where even though they won a game after getting booed a lot by the fans, they did not do the stick salute to the fans. So, of course, he was captain, took a lot of heat for that. Of course, he had a lot of pressure put on him, I believe, that just comes from playing in that market and wearing the jersey in the C. He just was a real good player that was put, in my opinion, just in a bad spot with way too much pressure and way too much expectations. Eventually, during the teardown, after they bring in like Mike Babcock and the new regime, Dion gets traded to Ottawa, get to play a different role, was a real good soldier there for a couple seasons, was a big part of their 2017 run to the Eastern Final against the Penguins. Then later moves on to the Los Angeles Kings, finishing things out. Clearly, towards the tail end of his career, wasn't quite as mobile and as good as he was early on, but still played over 1,000 games, multiple-time All-Star, and just an all-around good teammate on and off the ice. So Dion Phaneuf, would like to wish him the best in retirement, and be interesting to see how things go in the Leaf game tonight when they acknowledge him there this evening. We also got word today that Sammy Blais of the New York Rangers, of course, we know that he was injured in a collision with PK Subban a few nights ago. Of course, I know a lot of people are calling for Subban to get some discipline here for what appeared to be possibly another slew foot. I do think this situation is a little bit different, though, but you can make an argument, I think, in multiple ways. One, I guess you can say, kind of looks like there might be a bit of a skate-on-skate unfortunate collision, but then you have to wonder, the way PK is going in, did he have anything going through his mind? I really can't say, but it doesn't look good considering all these incidents that Subban has ran into here in the past 3 to 4 weeks. But we did get confirmation that for Blais, he is going to be out for the rest of the year with that knee injury. It's an ACL injury, 6 to 8 months recovery time. So it's real unfortunate. He was having a real solid start to the year for New York. We also got word that Habs goalie Jake Allen is indeed suffering from a concussion. At this point, it sounds like symptoms aren't too bad, but we really don't know. But they did say they were hopeful that he would be back by the weekend to possibly play on Saturday. So if that's the case, I would think that it can't be too severe at this point, but they can be hard to predict. And we certainly hope he recovers well. And the LA Kings have also sent down struggling youngster Gabe Vilardi, who certainly kind of came on a little bit more last year, but has struggled this year. He gets sent down to the minors with the amount of quality center icemen they have with NHL experience and young guys, like I said before, because he's been mentioned in trade rumors, not because the LA Kings want to get rid of him or anything, but just because they have so many young center prospects, along with guys like Kopitar and Danault, etc., already on the NHL roster under long-term contract, that they can't all get a spot in LA, and that he might be a guy that they end up moving. We'll see how things go for him in the minor leagues in the AHL, and if he can refine his game and maybe either generate interest for a trade or get another opportunity with the Los Angeles Kings. Now, another thing too I want to talk about quickly was the Vegas Golden Knights are starting to run into some issues with players testing positive for COVID, and have a few players now in COVID protocol. It started yesterday with William Carrier. Today it was announced Jonathan Marchessault, also the next one to test positive, and is now in protocols here as well. Now, if you've been following the channel along, you probably would have heard me kind of plead to the NHL a few times to shut down the Ottawa Senators. Many of you know that, of course, that is my favorite team that I do cheer for, and it wasn't for that reason. It was for their own wealth, and it was for their own health and safety, of course, but it's also for the health and safety of around the other teams they're playing. They came back from their road trip in the States where they were starting to have positive tests. It was starting to pile up quick, and Vegas was one of the first teams that they played when they returned home. And now they're already starting to run into the same situation. Now, hopefully it doesn't get out of control like Ottawa's did, having 10 players in protocol. But now the Senators are shut down. They're postponed. I think the NHL waited too long, but I understand to a degree why they did what they did. But you know, like they made the argument that the last two games, the teams were kind of already there waiting to play. So rescheduling or postponing was a little bit more difficult. But to me, they could have even shut it down before that. Maybe the Pittsburgh game, for example. The Penguins have had their own issues too. Just either way, it has the real potential here to spin out of control and affect other teams that they've been in contact with. So I don't think it's a coincidence that Vegas is starting to get a few positive cases here after playing the Senators, who are in a pretty serious outbreak. So we'll see where this goes, but I think the NHL took too long to act, in my opinion, but we'll see. Another quick thing that could happen as early as tonight or in the very near future here, it's kind of a neat statistic. Ryan Getzlaf in the Anaheim Ducks. The Getzlaf is 1 point shy for 1,000 for his career. So obviously that's a huge milestone, and he's been playing extremely well this year, getting a lot with Troy Terry, especially his resurgence has really helped Getzlaf, and they've played well together. But the other cool thing about this that could happen is that the Anaheim Ducks as a team, as a franchise, are 1 win shy for 1,000 in the team's existence. So they could win game 1,000 in their franchise history, and he could get point 1,000 in his career in the same game. So it certainly would be a really neat thing to see happen. Hopefully it does happen in the same game, and that could come as early as tonight. So we'll have to watch for that. And of course, another big piece of news that just dropped here just shortly before I started to record today's video here. The Pittsburgh Penguins are apparently for sale, and there's a real chance here we could get a sale closed in the next week or two, according to reports from the Wall Street Journal, and I've seen other media outlets picking up on the same report and adding to it as well. But apparently, Fenway Group and their main investor, John Henry, is in advanced talks to purchase the Pittsburgh Penguins. Of course, they've been owned since 1999 by former player and one of the all-time greats, Muriel and business partner Ron Burkle, who basically they saved the team out of bankruptcy to keep it in Pittsburgh and, obviously, rejuvenated it and getting things going. Obviously, that Sidney Crosby draft went a long way as well, but they even had work to do to even get to that point before that could ever happen. Of course, Crosby wasn't drafted, for a few years after they had owned the team already. So it would certainly be very interesting. Of course, Fenway Group, in case you're not familiar, they own the Boston Red Sox. They also own the English Soccer Club Liverpool, and they also have a stake in a NASCAR team as well. So they're certainly expanding to a variety of sports as they go and kind of increasing their portfolio here. I don't think there's any reason to think that an ownership change would result in really anything too significant when it comes to relocation or anything. I don't think there's any worries there. The Penguins have been on solid footing for a long time. You have to think, though, and of course we don't really know a lot of the behind the scenes numbers, that COVID and the whole pandemic and the shutdown, a lot of teams, a lot of businesses in general across the world had a major financial impact because of that. And I wonder if they're motivated by that for this sale or where things stand. It's a difficult, interesting kind of transition period, in my opinion, for the Penguins, because we're waiting to see the future of some of their top talent that has brought so much success to that franchise over the past, decade plus. I mean, Chris Letang's in the final year of his contract. So was Evgeny Malkin. Crosby still has a little bit more term left on his deal. But will those two, stars be back? Will they be re-signed? A lot of it was kind of led to believe here that they were kind of taking a wait-and-see approach and to see how the team does this year. Are they going to be contenders or not? If they wanted to be able to contend and give this team every piece of ammunition it could to contend while those three guys especially are still with the team and able to play at that level. And if not, then maybe it's time to consider a bit of a reset or a rebuild. And we don't really know where things are going to go. And I wonder if an ownership change will have an impact on those players' future, because we had heard before that essentially ownership in Muriel and Lemieux was going to have a big say in whether or not those guys were re-signed. They're not going to be making franchise-altering decisions at that level for these star players without them having some sort of involvement. And will that change, though? Like, will the new owners have a different take on things? That'll be a very interesting storyline to watch, in my opinion. And of course, we get Brian Burke, you get Ron Hextall that are fairly new to their position still. What kind of approach will they take with new ownership direction possibly? And the other thing we don't know as well is, will Lemieux and Burkle remain or retain some sort of minority ownership stake? Will they be involved in any capacity? I really don't know. The reports didn't fully indicate that I've seen. So we'll have to watch this situation closely. Nobody that I've seen was even really aware fully that the Penguins were even for sale and these talks were even ongoing. So we'll see where this goes. There could be some big news on that here within the next week or more. Of course, other big news in Vancouver. We got word today from Elliotte Friedman, who's been on a little bit of a hiatus over the past week, put out a tweet today indicating that Jim Benning will be meeting with owner Francisco Aquilini this afternoon to discuss why the team is in its current state, why they've been losing so much, and why things aren't going well. He said it's his belief at this point that it wasn't necessarily to discuss making any changes to the position, whether that be Benning's position himself or head coach Travis Green. But you have to think that if not today, after this meeting, that soon, if something doesn't change in a hurry and get some better results and some players playing better, that they're going to have no choice but to do something. I kind of wondered and mentioned this before and in the last video or two as well when we talked about the Canucks. I wonder if in this meeting, for example, Jim Benning would kind of put forth a plan to ownership to try to make things better. Would he consider moving on from Travis Green, who just signed a 2-year extension? Would they consider making a substantial trade to shake things up? You have to wonder what kind of tricks they're going to be pulling out of their sleeve to make this team bounce back and get back on the right track here and see what happens. But it'll be interesting to see what kind of feedback or what we learn from that meeting this afternoon. We also got word the New York Rangers are not going to be recalling Vitaly Kravtsov back from the Continental Hockey League. Of course, he's been playing over in Russia. After signing over there, they worked out a loan agreement for him to go over there after having, I guess you could call it a bit of a dispute and a trade request made. They have made attempts to smooth things over and kind of, reshape that relationship a little bit. But some wondered with Sammy Blais going down out for the season and other issues they've had with their injuries, if maybe Kravtsov could come back, because that certainly opens up a spot in the top 6 or top 9 forward group that maybe he could fit. But apparently that's not going to happen. The full intent when he went over there to play was to stay until the KHL season is over, and then there's a possibility he could be recalled towards the tail end of the year, because clearly their season, calendar-wise, finishes up ahead of the NHL. There would be time for him to come back and play some games towards the end, but we'll have to see where that goes as well. There's still some that are not 100% convinced that he's not traded. There's different beliefs out there. I think the Rangers at this point will take their time, let him stay over there, and if a deal comes along that they feel they have to take, they probably will. Otherwise, they'll probably do their best to try to mend the relationship and get them back into their lineup towards the end of the year. Unless they make other moves ahead of time. Of course, we'll see where it goes. The Rangers are off to a decent start and could contend for playoffs this year, so you have to wonder what that could mean for buying at the deadline or how they're going to approach things. There's a lot of debate over that as well, so we'll see where that goes. There's also some belief out there that Tuukka Rask is getting closer to making an NHL return, and I've seen some suggesting that there were reports from Chris Johnston, of course, who indicates that maybe Rask might be open to signing with other teams. I haven't seen the direct quotes from Johnston, but I have to think, based on what Tuukka Rask has said in the past, that would be really difficult to believe. But at the same time, I would have to think that the Bruins are fully open to him returning with them. And he mentioned before that it was not about money, that it was not going to be looking for a big money deal. He just wants to play and compete for another Stanley Cup. That's their goal here as players. And as he said, he had made enough money. It wasn't about that. But of course, you have to think the fact they signed Ullmark longer term. They have Jeremy Swayman, who's played well. How much room do they have, and how will they manage this? They could put Swayman in the minors, bring him up for playoffs. I don't know how they'll do it exactly, but still, Rask has been practicing and working out at the Bruins facilities. I wouldn't think that if they were really, not likely to bring him back, that probably wouldn't be happening. So I don't really know. I think something might have been taken out of context there on that report that I've seen about Rask, but I would fully think he is getting close to a return, and I would imagine it will be with Boston. I'd be quite surprised if it's anything else. And of course, I saw an article today in TVS Sports talking about the Montreal Canadiens and defenseman Samuel Girard, who's been mentioned a lot in NHL trade rumor mills here recently about the Avalanche maybe looking to make a change here on the blue line, maybe bring in another scoring type of forward who could play a top 6, top 9 role, maybe even have a bigger package involved, because Girard's value would be high given the fact that he's a fairly dynamic offensive defenseman. He's still relatively young. He's got a term on his contract that's not a crazy value, so it's manageable. So there's a lot of value there. If they were to make a trade, they're probably going to be looking at multiple pieces, and you have to think here with Montreal and the way things are going, that type of trade might set them up for the future. Like, they're not going to necessarily make trades to try to do anything drastic this season. I think they need to accept the fact that they obviously they're just not quite the same team. They've had a lot of bad breaks, and they've had, between Weber and Price being out, now Jake Allen's out, things haven't gone well. I don't see them doing anything too crazy to shake things up for necessarily this season. And if they do anything, it would be that kind of trade to look more for the future. I have to think a guy like Ben Sherratt's likely going to get traded from the Habs. Hard to say where he goes, but I'm guaranteed there will be interest for what he can bring in the playoffs especially. So would the Avalanche have any interest in him on an expiring contract to replace Girard on the blue line, to bring in a different style? And you'd have to think Montreal would have to include probably a young dynamic forward of some sort. Would they want somebody under contract, though, an older player that's been more experienced? Would they want like a guy like a Mike Hoffman, or would they prefer somebody more like a Ryan Poehling, a Yoel Armia? Hard to say, because there's certainly contracts there that are not too big, that it could be more manageable for the Avalanche. I know they're missing Brandon Saad, who had been left via free agency because it was going to be too difficult to work in cap-wise, but you have to wonder if a deal could be worked out in that respect. But it's hard to say what the asking price is going to be, and if Montreal really goes down that route. This was just more of an article expressing the desire that the Habs should do this, not necessarily link the fact that there is ongoing discussions or that they've been linked or anything of that nature. So it's just an opinion piece, you could say, to see where things could go. So let me know your thoughts on everything discussed here today down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis in all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.